My name is Pathamon Panit from Member Engagement of Thai IOD, and I will be the MC today. On behalf of Thai IOD, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to Director Briefing, which will be held under the topic of Essential Innovation Metric for Board Members. Before we start, may I invite Kun Kunlavet Jen Watanawit, CEO of Thai IOD, to give the opening speech.
ขอบคุณครับ สวัสดีครับ everyone. Hi, how are you? Do you like this place? Me too. Yeah, we just discovered that this is such a great place because in the afternoon we tend to fall asleep after lunch. So this is like bright and shine. And so welcome to the seventh director briefing. This time is very interesting because we always say that boardroom has to drive innovation. But how do we measure that? If we cannot measure that, then it's very difficult to see the accountability. So today we have Kun Dan Choma, and also Kun Oranut, Kun Mimi. But before that, I would like to go to the next slide. This is the reason why we have today is many of you probably have seen this slide. It's a slide that consists of community of practice of IoT. We decided that knowledge is goes too fast, too speedy for us. So we invited all these experts to lead all this knowledge for you. So we have three groups. The first group is Committee of Practice of Technology and Innovation by Kun Mimi, who is the moderator today also. And the second one is Sustainability, driven by Kun and Panachet. And the third one is Committee of Practice of Business Transformation and Leadership by Dr. Nathavut Nakap. So you will see the knowledge sharing out of these three groups. You have seen that and you see more of this. So without any further ado, I would like to give back to our MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kun Kulavet. Now it's time to begin the seminar. May I invite Mr. Dan Choma, Enterprise Innovation Strategy Expert and advocate of the ecosystem approach to innovation on the stage.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. I prepared some slides. I'm not planning on going slide by slide with you. I'm more interested in having a conversation. So the slides are only going to run for about 40 minutes, more or less. And then I really want to engage in a conversation with you, answer your questions. A bit about myself first. I work in consulting. I have an office called Outcome. We work with large organizations like yours around the world. Pretty industry agnostic. We worked in pharma. We worked in banking. We worked with sovereign funds. We worked in venture capital. So we have a lot of experience. But what I'm actually known for is the two books I wrote, The Corporate Startup and Innovation Accounting, both award-winning, both translated in many languages. They're actually talking about how do we make innovation work in the context of large organizations, regardless of the industry, regardless of the setup. I'm also sitting on the Working Council of the World Economic Forum for Digital Transformation and New Business Models. So again, getting exposed to a lot of the topics that you guys are seeing at board level pretty much every day. Talking about the experience, again, some of the companies I've worked with, and one of the threads that was pretty common throughout our engagement with these companies was how do we measure innovation and how do we make innovation a pragmatic thing? Because usually whenever you mention innovation to the board, and especially to the CFO, I don't know how many of you are CFOs here, you'd be like, oh, that's a cost. Oh, that's a cost. I want to stay away from that, which makes a lot of sense. It is a cost, right? But I should actually say that it's an investment. So the question is, how do we make innovation pragmatic so the CFO is happy with the results that he's going to see 3 or 4 years down the line from that investment? Otherwise, we go down the path of just having workshops and playing in nice rooms, and that's not innovation, that's innovation theater. So why do we need to measure innovation? There's basically 2 reasons why it's important to measure innovation. First and foremost is for goal setting. Whenever you want to have a conversation with the innovation leaders in your company, you need to set up goals for them. So what do we want to achieve? How does innovation contribute to our overall strategy? How do we connect innovation with our core business ambitions? How does innovation become an integral part of our growth approach? And for that, you need to have metrics, because otherwise you won't be able to manage and track progress and see if you're moving in the right direction. But also, metrics are great because they're going to tell you if you are doing the right type of innovation and if you are doing innovation in the right way. So these are basically the 2 benefits of measuring innovation. What is very interesting about innovation is that it actually contributes to growth. So in the period actually before COVID, right? So the period 2010 to 2019, for 9 years, companies that diversified their portfolio were showing a 9.7% return for shareholders. Companies that have a more conservative portfolio or less diversified were only showing about 8.3. So there wasn't a big gap between the innovative companies and the less innovative companies. This research was done on about 700 companies in Europe. So again, we can't say that we researched all the companies around the world, but the trend was pretty visible. Now, what was really interesting is what happened once COVID started and in the years following COVID. The same group of organizations posted totally different results. The diversified companies, the companies that actually invested heavily in innovation, were now showing a positive return, 8.3%. Whether the organizations that were very conservative when it came to their portfolio, they were just focusing on core, actually they were showing negative returns. But this big discrepancy happened in a period of uncertainty. COVID, the war in Ukraine, inflation. The organizations that were investing in innovation prior to these things happening, to these disruptions happening, were the ones that were seeing results when the disruptions occurred. The organizations that were just focusing on core business, they saw actually negative returns. So it's very important to innovate. It's important to see innovation as a way to future-proof and to weather-proof your organization. One of my favorite examples of organizations that are diversifying and that are using innovation in a very pragmatic way is Hermes. And I know that some of you actually have products from this brand. You're supporters of the brand. Hermes is very interesting because everybody knows them for fashion, but they actually have a very diversified portfolio. They even have coffee shops. So in Paris, in New York, in London, there's the Hermes coffee shop, which is very interesting because you as a brand now that sells extremely premium products can tap into the wallets of a part of a population that can't actually afford your product. You are selling them coffee and you're selling them the Hermes experience. So you might not sell them a $15,000, $20,000 bag, but you're selling them a $50 coffee. So now through innovation, you're able to tap into a market that was typically not yours. Also, they have partnerships with companies like Apple. They have pet products. They've also created a part of the organization dedicated to repairs. So if you have an old Hermes product, you can just send it there. Obviously, for a price, they will restore it and repair it for you. And this is a very interesting organization because you see that's their growth and their growth trajectory for the past 4 years. They are really going like this. And this is an organization that invested heavily in innovation. You can see their performance, 31%. It's pretty good. It's more than a lot of other competitors in the industry. And the interesting part about them is that they are still family owned, and they are the organization that it's under constant threat of taking over by Louis Vuitton. So every misstep that they make, every financial year which is bad, Louis Vuitton can come in and buy them. So they are always under pressure of not performing, but performing extremely well year over year. And they still invest in innovation, they still invest in diversifying their portfolio. Again, another big problem that most organizations have, especially in conservative industries, it's summed up by this quote from Gary, that we have 21st century technology like AI, blockchain, all of these things. We have 20th century management processes and 19th century principles. And this is something that you guys at board level really need to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Probably you've sat on many workshops on AI, right? You've sat on many workshops on cloud computing, right? How do I integrate that back into your organization? So basically this is what it looks like. You have the latest technology, but you have a very rigid organizational structure, and then you're doing a lot of command and control, or at least the culture is designed like that. So how do you circumnavigate this, right? How do you change? Well, you have to change towards a system for innovation. A system that actually goes against those 19th century and 20th century principles and approaches. A system that is designed to optimize for learning and agility. And we actually have an example here of a company. It's a bank in Norway. We actually worked with them. And this is the system that we built. We basically said the system is made up of 5 components. You have to have strategy, practice, governance, culture, and leadership, and they all have to work in sync. So basically what happens in that organization, and it's summed up by the quote behind me from the CEO of retail banking. Basically, the way this organization operates is that they create a strategy, but they create that strategy a series of assumptions. They basically say in their strategy, we believe that the market is going to head in this direction, and they list certain directions. What they do next is that they take that strategy and invest according to it. Basically in startups, their own startups, they venture build, they invest in CVC, and those teams actually go to the market and they validate whether or not the market is heading in that direction. So the products that they are building are aligned with the strategy. And if the products fail, or they fail in a way in which there's absolutely no evidence that those products will ever work, through governance, they learn that the market actually is not heading in that direction. So what they do next, they go to strategy and they update. It takes them in retail banking 8 months on average from the moment the strategy is created to an update in strategy. 8 months. 8 months to create a strategy, deploy it, and get results. So they don't wait until the end of the fiscal year or 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line to say, well, look, our strategy failed. Typical boards usually wait for the financial results to say if the strategy worked. This organization is using other type of metrics, innovation metrics, that are telling them the strategy will fail if they continue, so they have to stop it. So usually 8 months, it's probably very optimistic. I've only seen it once happening there, but every 12 months they definitely update the strategy. And obviously, because they are pushing for learning and they're pushing for velocity, the culture and the leadership follow. So they have a different culture in the organization where people are actually encouraged at product team level to raise their hand and say, boss, we are not heading in the right direction. We need to stop. And obviously the leadership is encouraging that kind of attitude. So this is, again, an organization that's optimized for learning, and it's optimized for agility. It's an organization that is focusing less on what technology is the trendiest now, and more focused on how do we become an organization that can deal with any type of new technology, that can weather any type of change. Actually, they outperformed themselves financially during lockdown in COVID. So during lockdown in COVID, this organization posted better financial results than they posted in the years before, because they created a system that allowed them to really shift resources super fast from one part to the other and actually learn. Again, the thing with innovation and the problem that we have at many board levels is that somehow, sometime in the past, you guys were sold on the innovation being binary. We either do incremental or we do super transformative stuff that's over here. And this is very detrimental, because if you invest binary, you're only going to invest actually in core, because there's very little evidence for you or reason for you logically to invest in disruptive stuff. High returns might be there, but there's also high risk. Long term, super long term on this side, well, I can just do the stuff over there, which is amazingly profitable next quarter. The thing is that there is ground in the middle where you should be innovating. And most organizations that actually see returns from innovation, they see it from this middle ground for the differentiating or adjacent innovation. Type of innovation that is not as sexy as the disruptive thing. You're not going to have, TechCrunch write about it, or even Texas write about it. But you are going to have results on an annual basis. How does this look like? Well, this is actually an example of the portfolio of Daimler, right? And I guess all of you know who Daimler is, right? They have Mercedes brands and smart cars, and then they have the buses and the trucks and all of those things. Well, on the incremental and core innovation, they do something like the EQs, the electric vehicles, the hybrid vehicles, the new models of the Mercedes brand. On the other side of the scale, they've actually invested in a company that is doing helicopters. They were supposed to be at the Olympics this year. They failed to meet the deadline, but the idea was to replace taxis with helicopters. Well, how long will it take for those helicopters to actually be profitable? What's the level of risk there? It's huge. They are just doing 1 or 2 bets in that space. The majority of new growth in Daimler comes from the middle, where they have services like Free Now. Free Now is a Grab equivalent for Europe. So basically, you can order taxis, you can order delivery of things for them, you can do all of those things. And they're spread all throughout Europe, not just in Germany, but in pretty much every country you have Free Now. And they also have ride sharing. It's called Share Now. It used to be called Car2Go. It's a new model where you are in essence renting car per minute. So the car is parked anywhere in the street, and everybody that's a subscriber can access the car, pay per minute, and then just use it, drop it off, lock it, and then somebody else would come and pick it up. That part in the middle is where Daimler is actually seeing most of the growth. Share Now, as I said, it was called Car2Go when it was created. It's already 10 years old, and it's present in pretty much every big cities in the West. Not just in Europe, but also in North America, in Canada, you have that Share Now concept. So most of the growth actually happens not from the disruptive stuff, not from helicopters and flying cars and things like this, but for stuff that is really, really boring. It uses the assets, and it uses the capabilities, and it uses the things that you have now under your belt, and it's stretching them a bit. Not going all the way out, just a tiny bit. This is where you're gonna see 5x return, no more than 5x return, but again, sufficient to change the profile of your company, the profitability profile of your company. Another example is from an energy company we worked with. This is a company in renewables. So they are actually building renewable energy farms, offshore wind to be specific. So their core business is to build a farm, take the energy, produce the energy, and sell it to the grid, to the national grid. This is their core business. Yeah, and they're improving there. There's new turbines, there's new blades, there's new technology that comes in. They're constantly improving that. But again, most of their growth comes from the middle. And an example of an idea from the middle that now it's going to be probably quite profitable for them is going to be a product that has to do with power curve measurements. So measuring how much power does a turbine generate. They've spotted the problem with the engineering of the turbine, and now they said, well, we're going to create a product that will allow us to be more accurate in measuring the power curve, and maybe we're also going to sell it to our competitors. So again, this was not super sexy, it was not really disruptive, it wasn't AI-driven and other buzzwords. It was really addressing a core business challenge in a different way. On the right-hand side of disruptive, yeah, they do stuff like, secondary use of assets. Like, for example, they're growing, oysters and clams on the turbine foundation, which is totally, different, right, for an energy company to do that. But actually, their profitability is from the middle, from the central part. This is where you have the new ideas that actually contribute to the top line growth of the company quarter over quarter. Now, the thing with innovation, and this is very interesting, is that, and again, I fully agree with the CFOs in the audience. I've worked with many CFOs in my life. It's a very risky business. Innovation is very risky. This is actually the financial performance of venture capital companies in Canada over a period of 10 years. So basically, 1 in 2 investments will fail. 65% to be precise, will return somewhere in between 0 and 1x. So at the very best, on 65% of your investments in innovation, you can hope to break even on 65%. The rest are going to be the ones that are actually profitable. But if you're looking at the return of 10x or 20x, the stuff that TechCrunch is writing about, the super disruptive stuff, 2.5% of your investments. So I wouldn't recommend you guys to chase after 10x, 20x, or 50x ideas. If you are chasing after ideas that are 1 to 5x or 5 to 10, your chances increase exponentially to see success. So it's very important what kind of innovation you do if you want to see returns. And again, my advice, chase ideas that are 1 to 5x. 3 to 5, actually, I usually say 3 to 5x. Because those are obviously way more profitable than your core business, because your core business is returning what? 30% max? 40% if you're lucky, right? I mean, if you're Hermes, you're returning more than that, but you're not Hermes. And again, you can change the profitability profile of your company by investing in innovations that return 3x, 4x, 5x. And your chances of success, 25%. 1 in 4 ideas will return that. I think that's pretty good chance. I would take those chances. If I would have to invest, I would definitely take those chances. Now again, one of the biggest myths that I've been hearing working with boards and teaching at universities and being with the World Economic Forum was the 70-20-10 investment. Oh, we need to invest 70% in core, 20% here in the middle, and 10% here on the far side. It's a big myth. It's a big myth. Nobody invests 70-20-10. The way you invest and the right investment mix actually comes from what you're trying to achieve. How does your organization look like, and what is your strategy? If your strategy doesn't allow you to invest in disruptive stuff, you're only going to invest in core. If your organization doesn't have the money to invest in disruptive stuff, you're only going to invest in core. If the market is in such a way designed that it doesn't make sense for you to invest in disruptive stuff, you don't do it. For example, companies that are in aircraft interiors. Do you know how many companies build aircraft interiors, out of curiosity? Anybody knows? Like seats and stuff like that for aircraft. 3 companies in the world. So that's a market which has 3 competitors. Please go to the board of any of those companies and explain to them why they need to invest in disruptive innovation. Right? That makes absolutely no sense for them. They need to literally just improve the quality of the seats, they improve the core business, make them thinner, make them lighter, because they are under pressure from the carriers, like from Etihad, from Emirates, from Lufthansa, because they are also under pressure from the governments to lower emissions and lower fuel consumption. And that's it. That's all the innovation investment that they make. So they're basically investing 99% in core and then 1% spread over some stuff that they really want to play with. They want to play with new materials, they want to play with new stuff, which honestly still feeds the core. But they are not investing 70, 20, 10. And again, I have two examples here. We worked a lot in pharma, and we actually worked with both of these companies, Bayer and Roche. Totally different companies. On paper, they look the same. They have, 100,000 employees, and they are spread geographically in the same places, but they are totally different as organization. One of them is focusing on commoditized medicine. The other one is focusing on specialized medicine. And their profitability is totally different. You can see the number for Roche, and you can see the number for Bayer. Although the revenue generated, yes, it's twice, the operating profit of Roche is significantly higher than what Bayer is posting as a percentage of what they're generating. Why? Because they are managed differently, and they have different needs. Bayer cannot afford to invest in the central part or in disruptive. They are not profitable enough to waste that kind of money. Whether in Roche, it's not a problem. Roche is actually investing about 50% of their annual revenue in innovation that is basically the middle part, adjacent. And this is why they have one of the most amazingly diverse portfolio. Do you know that Roche is actually selling software? Yes, they are selling software for labs. So if you are a lab trying out medicine or building medicine, you can buy software from Roche. Yes, they are also selling, medicine for cancer, and they have, stuff in ophthalmology, but they are also selling lab equipment, not just software, hardware. Again, super diversified company. And they can afford to do that because they are super profitable. On the other hand, Bayer, which in my opinion made a big mistake by acquiring Monsanto, because now they acquired all the lawsuits and all the litigations from Monsanto as well, so they are paying now reparations on Monsanto. They can't afford to do that kind of innovation. The only innovation they can afford to do is core innovation. They are digitizing stuff, they are improving their efficiency, they are doing all of those things, but they're never going to become as financially profitable as Roche is, at least not in the next 10 years. And I know this because we actually wrote the strategy for both companies, so we know exactly the direction in which they're heading. But again, all the things in the slides are just using information that's publicly available. So I haven't created this slide with my own knowledge. I created this slide based on publicly available information. So you can actually see how your investment profile as an organization will change relative to your strategy, but also relative to how much you can afford to invest. It makes no sense to start pursuing the 50-40-10 approach that Roche has if you can't afford that. If you can't afford that, probably you should be a bit more conservative like Bayer is, with 80% going to core. Yes? Yes, it's including the number from, so the financial figures there are also from Monsanto. It's basically the annual, it's coming from the annual report from Bayer. Sorry? Okay. I've taken from the annual report. So if in the annual report they didn't include Monsanto, they didn't include Monsanto. I think that it includes Monsanto, but I don't know. But nevertheless, their investment profile is the same. Like, they're still investing primarily in core business stuff. We worked with them on digitizing clinical trials, for example, and when we asked them, why don't you take these clinical trials things that you created and sell them and build them into digital products and have have Roche or Novartis or J&J pay you for that software, the leadership and the culture there was like, no, this is our product and we're not going to sell it to anyone. Like, well, you can, because Roche is selling software. No, it's not part of what we want to do as an organization. Okay, fine, fair enough, just continue doing your own digital stuff. It's fine, not everybody needs to innovate. So again, where does the money come from and how you should invest, right, in innovation? So on the core stuff, literally just use existing OPEX budgets. Just, constant improvements. Constant improvements, they can go from the OPEX budget. For the central part, set money aside, create an innovation fund in the organization or an innovation budget and invest in the middle part from that innovation budget. And if you want to do really far stuff, don't do it with the normal budget. Create a corporate venture capital, create an M&A separate budget. Don't go for putting at risk the innovation budget or the OPEX budget. Just set some money aside for 10 years for M&A or CVC, and that's where you're going to do the disruptive innovation. That's where you're going to invest in disruptive ideas. Now, how do we budget today, right? Like, how do we create those budgets for innovation? This is a question that we often get asked by boards. Like, how do we do it today? Should we put 5% of revenue aside, 10%, 20%, 2%? What do we need to do? Well, it actually depends on what you want to achieve. But I'm going to give you an example of two companies which are very dear to my heart. One of them is DuPont. The big chemical company, material science companies from the US. They have 3 or 4 business lines, very different one from another. But the way they approach investing in innovation and creating the budget for investment actually follows a very pragmatic approach. They're looking basically at this year's revenue and how much in percentage from this year's revenue is under threat in the next 3 to 5 years. And they come up with a number. They call it portfolio fade, actually. So they say, well, this amount, it's going to be under threat in the next 3 to 5 years. So what they say, they go back to innovation and said, look, we want in the next 3 or 5 years to generate this figure in revenue from new products because we know this percent of revenue might not be here in the next 3 or 5 years. There's going to be products that are obsolete, products where we have to actually stop selling because we're losing patent, or products that we have a high level of competition in. What we're going to do, we want to replace these with new products. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, so it's going to be a lead time of 3 to 5 years. But we're going to look at today's today's revenue under threat and create our goals for what we want innovation to contribute in 3 to 5 years. And then there, they create some scenarios on what is the right mix of innovation vehicles to use to achieve that. They can say, well, from what we want to have innovation contribute in 3 to 5 years, we want majority of it to come from M&A activities. So we're going to just acquire companies. That's an approach. Or we say, well, we can't just acquire companies, we're going to do a mix of internal innovation with some external stuff, maybe we do some CVC. So they create those scenarios. But the figure, how much a company needs to see from innovation actually comes from the core business needs. We have some revenue under threat, we know how much it is, and we want innovation to contribute that. And since they've done this for 10, 20 years, they know exactly how many ideas they need to invest in which vehicles, and so on and so forth. So it's an entire oiled machine there that's telling them exactly how much they need to invest. Another example, which is a bit different, is Harman Kardon. I guess you know the brand, right? They're doing music systems. They are actually very big in automotive. They are seeing most of their revenue in automotive. What they've actually realized, and again, we're speaking with them now about it, what they realized is the automotive market will change in the next 10 years. So they set themselves an ambition that by 2030, so in 7 years, 6 years from now, 50% of the company's revenue should come from products and services that they don't have today. 50%, it's a big number, right? It's a huge number. So they basically said, well, okay, we know where we are now. We know where we want to be in 2030. We know how much of that gap will be covered through, market momentum, gains, currency, all of those things that we do as an organization. But we know there's also a gap, and that gap should be filled in by innovation. And now they're basically creating a series of scenarios on how to best deploy their budget to achieve that goal. One of the scenarios is we're going to acquire everybody we can. Okay, can we actually do it? How much will it cost? What will be the return? In essence, what they're trying to answer, it's basically what is the right mix? How many ideas should we have internally? How much should go to M&A? How much should go to corporate venture capital? How much should be incremental improvements of our existing offering? And they're basically creating a series of scenarios, and at the end they're going to pick the one that is most suitable for them. It might be the less risky one, or it might be the one that is, the closest to their core business, or exactly what they will pick is not really clear. Our job is actually to create the scenarios for them. Their decision is going to be the ultimate thing, right? But again, it's totally different than DuPont. So DuPont starts from what is under threat. This guy starts from a vision. Vision 20, 30, 50%. Probably it's not going to be 50%, but if they aim for 50%, they're going to still probably see a 40% of revenue by 2030 coming from new products and new services. So again, as a board, these are the inputs that they need in terms of metrics for innovation whenever they set these goals. Basically, you have to have those 4 metrics. So what is your funnel conversion rate? So if I'm starting 10 ideas now, how many of them will make it to maturity? That's a very, very important metric to have. The other one is average time to maturity. So how long does it actually take for us to reach maturity, right? We're investing, well, it takes 3 years, 5 years, 2 years for an idea to reach a certain maturity stage where we actually start seeing results. What is our cost of failure? Super important. How much are we spending for failed initiatives on average? I can tell you that I work in an organization that we're spending millions for failed initiatives, and one of my jobs was to reduce the cost of failure. Because if you reduce the cost of failure, then your innovation budget is going to last you longer in terms of you can try out more things if you have a good cost of failure. And then, very important, what is the average return you can expect? With these numbers, they can set up goals now. This is an approach that we call future to present. So we know where we want to be in the future. How much do we need to invest today? If you have access to these numbers, you can start creating those scenarios if you want. There's another approach that other clients of ours are taking, and organizations that are not really mature or not as mature as the Harma Kardons and the DuPonts of the world. It's present to future. Basically, they say, look, I want to invest 5 million euros, 10 million euros, 100 million euros. What is it realistic for me to expect 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line when it comes to returns? This is more about managing expectations more than it is about goal setting. So here you're basically spending time with the board and say, look, if you only have 10 million to invest, this is what is realistic for you to expect if we have access to these numbers. So again, pretty much the same numbers as in the previous scenario, but used the other way around, from what we want to invest today to where do we want to be in the future. And again, very important is to have access to this type of data. It's to have access to data that is not necessarily reported in annual financial reports. Like it's not on the balance sheet. Your cost of failure is not nowhere near, to your balance sheet or to your annual reporting or to your communication to your shareholders. So it's very important to have other type of information that is feeding your decision-making process. And that type of information is, in essence, innovation accounting. Innovation accounting, it's basically giving you information that it's not presented by financial accounting. It's not replacing financial accounting in any way. It's just offering you information that financial accounting can't provide you with. As I said, cost of failure, a good example. time to maturity or time to market. Again, another example. And this is very useful because investors these days are actually using more of alternative metrics whenever they decide to invest in a company than they are using the financial reports. Financial reports, we've done research, and it's in the innovation accounting book. Financial reports have actually gone down in relevance for investors over the past 20 years. Now they are more interested in what the CEO is tweeting than what the financial reports are saying. I know you might say, yeah, this is stupid, but this is how the stock market works. And this is why having alternative things that you are reporting to the investors and to your board and to shareholders in general makes a lot of sense, because you're telling them if your organization is equipped to deal with uncertainty. So financial accounting is not going to get replaced, but is going to get complemented by innovation accounting. All the indicators I showed you on the previous slide regarding goal setting, those are innovation accounting indicators. They're not financial accounting. Now, what does innovation accounting mean? And this is a definition. Again, it's a set of metrics that are designed to measure your company's innovation efforts. And again, the definition is in the book. I'm not going to read it word by word. It's accessible for anyone. Now, what's really interesting about innovation accounting is that it's not one metric. It's actually a system of metrics. And depending on where you are in the organization, you're going to have different metrics that are relevant for you because they answer different questions. If you're at board level, your metrics should answer the question, is our company overall innovation investment working? Is our company overall innovation system functioning? Those are the metrics that are super relevant for you. If you go one layer below you, if you go to middle management, they're probably more interested in the actual throughput on the funnel. Does the funnel function? How many investments do we have? How many investments do we have per strategic areas? How many investments do we have at certain maturity stages? So on and so forth. If you go one layer below them at team level, then you're asking, hey, is this performing team or is the other team performing better? Should we invest in team A or in team B relative to some metrics? And lastly, you have metrics on culture and skill. Are our people skilled enough? Are our people developed enough? Do we have the right culture in the organization? Can we innovate as a group? So it's not about one single metric. It's about a series of metrics that work together. And this is how it looks like. And now you'll be like, whoa, this is super complicated. It's not. I'm going to break it down to you. It looks complicated. I mean, we built this in a book, so it had to look complicated because it was in a book. Yeah, it's actually very, very easy. And the easiest way to explain it to you is with a case example. And I don't know how many of you know this brand, DMV? No? You don't know them? You know them, right? Right. Do you work in maritime industry or in energy? Oh, okay. Yeah, because they also do that. They're an organization that is certifying equipment, various types of equipment, but they are the biggest player in maritime. If you go to any harbor in the world, 1 in 4 ships is certified by them. Number 2 and number 3 combined in the industry don't have the footprint that these guys have. They're super, super big. So we've done the entire transformation for DMV, starting from basically nothing to building a system for innovation. I'm going to explain to you how they actually approach innovation accounting. So basically, you see all these indicators here. What they actually say is that they want to have 25%. This is actually from 2020 or 2019. They basically said that, hey, listen, by 2025, we want to have 25% of our new revenue coming from new products. Pretty clear, right? They know what their revenue is going to be, and they say 25% equals X. They know exactly what that figure is. Once they realized what the NPVI figure is, that's called New Product Vitality Index, 25%, they basically said, well, in that case, we have to have a certain number of ideas reaching a certain maturity level that will allow them to generate revenue. They know, okay, so given everything that we have, probably we need 10 or 20 ideas or 30 ideas. So now they know exactly how many ideas they need to have at a certain maturity level. If they know how many they have to have at a certain maturity level, they can go one layer below and they can start looking at how confident are they on individual teams that those teams are going to make maturity. At individual team level, so looking at the things that the team has done, looking at the progress that they made, how fast they made that progress, they will give a vote of confidence. I trust about 30% that you're going to make it. Or I trust 70% that you're going to make it. Or I don't trust you at all and we should stop this idea. And this is basically how they are approaching. Everything goes to how confident the decision makers are in each team. And with that confidence being increased from meeting to meeting, they would progress the team from one stage to the next. Those teams reach maturity, they have an impact on the goal. So they were actually working backwards from what they wanted to achieve to how many teams they need and how much confident they need to be in each team. The interesting thing about it is that they were actually meeting the teams every 3 weeks. So every 3 weeks, meeting with the decision makers, hey, let's increase your confidence. If we have to increase your confidence, if not, we're going to take a decision. We can stop your idea. We can pivot your idea. We're going to see what we do about your idea, but 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks afterwards, and then 3 weeks afterwards. And this is how they've actually applied it. So these are basically their metrics. They had inputs from teams on only the blue one, so only 4 inputs for the teams. The rest were actually computed automatically through software. And then they had some indicators that they were computing manually at the end of the year. So majority of the work was actually done by software. Very little input from the team. Now, how it looked in terms of process. So basically, this is the process that I just explained. Teams were innovating, day in, day out. They had certain teams building certain products, building certain ideas. The second thing is that they were meeting with the decision makers every 3 weeks. This is actually a screenshot from the software that they were using. So every 3 weeks, there was a meeting that was going in. They were just having a conversation with the decision makers on the progress made in the past 3 weeks. I don't know, experiments that were done or anything like that. Then the decision makers were basically looking at this progress and said, okay, given the fact that you have done this experiment, given the fact that we trust the new data that you provided or the new insight that you generated, we are going to, they were also reporting costs, they were also reporting cost and impact every 3 weeks. But basically, the decision makers were now taking a decision, like basically, how much do we trust? How much do we trust the experiment that you've done? Do we actually believe that you're on the right track? No, we don't actually believe that you're on the right track. I think you should have done a better experiment. Given everything that the team was presenting, they would give an overall confidence to the team. They said 0 to 100%, how much do we trust you moving forward? And then they would take a decision. And the decision would be persevere, continue your idea, stop the idea, this is not going anywhere, or progress it to the next development stage. And progressing to the next development stage also meant we're going to invest more in you. You're going to have access to more resources. So basically, this loop that you're seeing here with these 7 steps was happening every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks, teams were reporting, they were coming in, confidence was changing, ideas were moving from one stage to the other. Obviously, everything geared towards their 25% NPVI figure. Now, these are some indicators that they were tracking through software and the insights. I'm not going to go literally letter by letter, but you can see some of them are super, super cool because this gives them really access to understanding how well innovation is performing, and not just that, but also what they can expect in the future from innovation. And basically, this is from the software. This is actually the CFO. So again, I said that we worked with CFOs. Some of the best transformations that we've done were projects were sponsored by the CFOs. As Thomas said here, now they have an ability to track literally every single dollar of investment. Every single dollar of investment that was going in innovation, they had now an ability to know how much this will account for in the future. which allow them to, on the one hand, improve the system, basically say, hey, we are going to need to upskill people, or we need to hire more people, or we need to hire different types of people, on the one hand, and on the other hand, what this will allow them to do is allow them to set really pragmatic goals. Really pragmatic goals. Certain number of revenue by a certain date from a certain number of ideas. This is pretty much it. I wanted to leave you with our definition of innovation, and I want to open, now for questions. This is what we say innovation is. This is our personal definition of innovation. We basically say that, it's the use of new technology, new ideas, and new ways of doing business to support your strategic agenda. If innovation is not doing this, that, in my opinion, is not innovation. That's just, let's go and play with Post-it notes somewhere in the corner. But I would personally not finance that, or at least not from the innovation budget. Maybe you can invest from the HR budget, but not from the innovation budget. No offense to the people in HR, by the way. Let's open for some questions.
Thank you very much, Kun Dan. And next, may I invite Kun Aranut Lersuwankit, CEO and co-founder of TechSource, on the stage. And if anyone have a question, you can scan QR code on the screen and type your question. Kun Aranut will select and also ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Actually, there are many questions that pop up in my mind during watching the slide. And I think that there are many big corporate in Thailand right now who many people here sit at the board level. And we have seen that there are many big corporate that try to invest a lot of the project, which is an innovation project, and they spend a lot of the money. So my question is how long should the organization and the board wait for an innovation project that is still operating at loss? Yeah.
Right. No, actually, yes. Here we go.
Some project, I think that they still cannot see the profit.
Right.
Maybe spend too much budget for 3 or 4 years already. But
oh my God.
What is a key milestone that, okay, this is the right time that we had to cut off this project?
The easiest answer will be that it depends. It depends on, the project, because there are certain technology projects that take 10 or more years to see return. It really depends on the project, it depends on the technology, it depends on the company. If you are a pharma company, it takes 10 years to build a new drug, right? To get it certified and what. So it's fine if you're doing that. Well, the easiest answer to that question would be try to benchmark against previous performance that you had, or try to benchmark against what is happening in the startup world. Because if in the startup world, it takes about 2 or 3 years to launch a product in that segment, if you're taking more than 3 years, you should probably stop the project. That will be my answer. If you're in retail banking, and we know that in retail banking, startups are really moving really fast. Every 6 months, every 8 months, they are actually growing. If your internal retail banking idea is taking more than that, please stop it. But if you're doing, certain type of, cancer treatment or whatever, it takes a really long time to research, it's fine to do it. So I don't think there is necessarily a number and say 3 months, 5 months, or 6 years or whatever. Use internal benchmarking and benchmark against what the startups are doing, because that's a very good indication.
Just in case that some company here still do not starting about finding the new S-curve or looking for the way how to do the innovation inside the company. So what is the bare minimum that we need to do to start measuring the innovation?
Yeah, I would say that first and foremost, you have to have a strategy. Very, very important to have a very clear growth strategy. What's the direction in which we're going? Once you have that strategy in place, the next thing is to have a really good governance system. And by governance, I mean what are the stages ideas take from the moment they were created to the moment they are profitable, and what happens at each stage of development? What are some things that the teams need to do, but also how much are we going to invest? So we call it the product lifecycle or idea lifecycle. You can call it whatever you want. For the sake of the conversation, I'm going to call it the product lifecycle. So you have to have a strategy and a product lifecycle. And then very important is to have ideas that are being generated and being worked on, and have decision makers that are looking at those ideas on the constant basis. I showed you DMV, they were looking at those ideas every 3 weeks. You have to create your own cadence. In the case of Roche, they were actually looking at the ideas every 6 weeks, because obviously being a pharma company, things were a bit slower than in engineering.
We already have the question from the floor. I think that we should. Okay, it's easy. How do you handle the resistance from the finance and accounting team on the extra work and process? Yeah, this is a same question that how to balance between the financial. Oops, sorry.
Right. So it's a very it's your microphone. It's a very good question. There is no easy answer here. You just basically have to tell them that they have to put up with the extra work. Obviously, I would encourage you to use software. And again, we presented one software piece. There are many others on the market. We encourage you to use software for that. But it's easier first for them to get used to doing it manually and then introduce software. So it's not going to be pleasant, definitely. It's not going to be easy. But they also have to see the benefit. Because for them at the moment, everything that goes towards innovation goes under the cost, goes under liability. And I would say, well, listen, if you're also chasing these other things and you're looking for these other things, you're also going to see the benefits. Another very cool way that we've seen, for example, with Bayer, is that they integrated some finance people and some controllers in the innovation teams, for them to get the experience of what it means to work on innovations, right? What it means to work with uncertainty, what it means to run experiments, meet with customers every week or every 3 weeks, and so on and so forth. That's the way I would personally do it. But yeah, it's going to be a hard pill to swallow, to be honest with you.
Difficult to define the organic versus differentiate the disrupt idea. What is the good screening criteria and financial return?
Yeah, so it's very important to have a definition of innovation in your organization, because that definition of innovation, it doesn't only serve the purpose of a definition, it also serves the purpose of how do you govern those ideas. If they are innovative or disruptive in nature, they're going to follow another governance framework than if they are constant improvements or continuous improvements. So again, it's going to be part of your definition of what innovation means, and then you will have to decide. Now, if you want a finance answer to that, I would say that incremental usually contributes to bottom line efficiency. So incremental ideas are all about, how do we make our core business a bit more efficient? Reduce the lead time at the waiting counter, reduce patient wait time for a doctor, whatever it is, right? If you're talking about the more disruptive side of the spectrum, you're talking about adjacency, disruptive innovation, those usually contribute to top line growth. New revenue. I'm going to not even call it top line growth, I'm going to call it just new revenue. So that will be a financial distinction I would make between the two. If it contributes to bottom line efficiency, it's incremental innovation. If it's going to generate money that we don't yet have and or from sources that we don't have yet access to, it's definitely more disruptive in nature or adjacent.
Actually, there is another question that come before this question. I can remember. They asking about there is the project inside the company that focusing on innovation, but it's still inside the company. They still do not spin off from the main, from the big corporate. So should they spin off the innovation team from the main one?
If that particular team cannot survive in the current environment, spin it off. spin it off. We actually created a checklist, and I honestly don't remember it by heart, but we actually created a checklist for the things you need to look for if you need to spin off or you need to spin in an idea. But it depends a lot on the environment. Honestly, I don't believe a taxi company could have invented Uber. I honestly don't believe a taxi company could have done that in a million years. They might have had the idea, but nobody would finance it. So obviously, if you are a taxi company in the 2010s and an employee comes up with the Uber idea, I would definitely recommend you spin that thing off. But there's many things to consider for that. But usually, it's how ready is the organization to receive that idea. Might have to be 3 weeks.
Yeah, there is another one that talking about the because some particular industry have the different period of time
Right.
for
So
waiting innovation.
those 3 weeks, just to be clear, those 3 weeks were something that we actually reached at. It was not something that we designed by or created at the beginning by design, saying, "Oh, it's going to be 3 weeks." We experimented with multiple reporting intervals, and we realized that 3 weeks it's an ideal time frame for teams to have something to report. We went from DMV directly to Roche, and we applied those 3 weeks intervals. We were going in meetings with teams, and the teams had absolutely nothing to present. Absolutely nothing. 3 weeks was just too small of a time frame for a pharma company to have anything reporting. And this is why we moved from 3 to 6 weeks. And then 6 weeks, we kind of like saw that teams now have something to report. So those 3 weeks, it's literally a random number. It just happened to work because it worked in that context. But if you are a different organization, it might be 4 weeks, or it might be 7 weeks. What's very important to remember there is constant iterations, constant meetings with the teams. Another thing that we are now realizing with some of our clients is that relative to the maturity of an idea, those check-in intervals need to differ. So early stage, you might actually want to meet your idea every week. But once they make it, past a year of maturity or 2 years of maturity, meeting them every quarter will be enough. So again, it's not about those 3 weeks as it is about those increments.
This is very interesting because to measure the degree of the innovation across companies, we have different kind of measurement for the big corporate, especially for the a listed company, right? But to promote the innovation for the whole country, should we have the government incentive or any kind of incentive that's supported by the capital market?
Well, if you're not zooming out to country level, we can write another book together if you want, right? There are obviously going to be other metrics that are important, right? It's going to be very interesting, how many startups do we create as a country on an annual basis? What is the lifetime of a startup, right? Again, there are so many things. You can look if those startups are generating revenue from a domestic budget or they are generating revenue from outside. There's 100 million indicators that we can look at.
There is the question about the innovation accounting directly. Is there any specific condition to be able to apply as standard practice?
I think it's going to take a lot of time for innovation accounting to become a standard practice. I honestly don't think it will happen in my lifetime. I don't know, maybe it's going to happen in my son's lifetime, but I'm even doubtful of that. But again, what's relevant there and what's important there is that you should do it because you see a benefit from doing it, not because there is a body like a government body forcing you to report those numbers. Because a lot of the numbers that you are reporting today forced by the government don't really add value to your decision making. Sometimes you just have to report on them because the government wants you to report on them. So whenever you are trying to apply innovation accounting, think about from your perspective. What does make sense from your perspective? Does it make sense to report those? Is this going to benefit me in a way? Whenever I work with boards, I always say that the amount of time and the amount of effort we put into measuring something should never outweigh the benefit we get by knowing that number. So if it takes me 3 weeks to know a number, that number better be very important because I just spent 3 weeks to crunch that number. If it's not that relevant and it took me 3 weeks to do it, please don't do it. It makes zero sense to do it if it outweighs if the cost outweighs the benefit, basically.
So management level should update the board frequently.
Yeah, 100%. Every quarter at least there should be a meeting between the middle layer of the organization and the top to report on the funnel performance. How many ideas do we have? How much money it goes to which certain strategic initiative? Where are certain strategic initiatives in the pipeline relative to their maturity? Are they moving? Are they moving from last quarter? Where do we see them moving in the next quarter? Because at the end of the day, you want those initiatives to make it to maturity and you want them to contribute to growth. And you have to know how far is that growth from you. Is it a quarter away or is it 6 quarters away?
Okay. Another one is related with management because at the board level, normally we have like a risk management committee. So how to do risk management for innovative project? Because currently we are in the situation that, like for example, like a black swan event, we have like a geopolitical conflict, trade war, or like economic crisis during this kind of the tough time. What kind of the advice that you would like to give?
So what's the question again?
The question is how to do risk management for innovative
risk
project.
management, right. Well, it's a very interesting question because this goes back to how do you do financial projections. I personally believe that on risk management is very important to use Monte Carlo simulations because Monte Carlo simulations are going to tell you in essence how much risk do you have for every option in your portfolio. And you can start playing with different scenarios for risk relative to what you want to invest and relative to the degree of risk that you want to be under. Some boards, some companies really like to take risks because they can afford it. Some companies don't. And risk management, it's actually built into the Monte Carlo methodology. So it's methodology coming from engineering, but it can be applied very well to the financial world and to risk management.
The next one, considering that returns from innovation can be uncertainty, how can the board and manager level help to drive an innovation culture in the organization?
Right. So again, this is very much connected with the previous question on Monte Carlo. Yes, obviously you have a lot of uncertainty, but that particular uncertainty can be measured. You know exactly what is expected to happen. So if you have a certain outcome that's being expected, you can start preparing the organization and the organization culture around it. You can say, well, we know from experience in our company that 1 in 2 ideas will fail. And we are actually willing to give bonuses to people that sign up to work in innovation, knowing that half of their ideas will fail. Like, this is not going to be a career stain on somebody's CV if you worked on an initiative and that initiative failed. On the contrary, you can create an award for that. The person that killed the most ideas, or the person that killed the idea themselves, or the person that killed the most ideas in a certain amount of time. You can play around with that. Actually, every single time when we were working with the client and we had the team kill their own idea, we created a very big party. And really a lot of PR, internal communication. Look, this is a great team. They kill their idea themselves. We should, give them a big hand. They are the best team. So that created a very positive culture with respect to failure and with respect to experimenting. Uh, Again, it's really down to the culture, and your job as leader is to shape that culture. So if you're going to be the one that's punishing people, don't be the one that's asking, hey, why aren't people in this organization more innovative? Well, you just beheaded the person that failed a week ago. So probably that's not a good question to ask. But if you be, hey, this is a great idea, or put them on stage at the quarter review and say, hey, this is Mimi and she failed with her idea. We should give a big hand to Mimi for failing with her idea. That sets the right tone. In Amazon, for example, you get an award for failing with something. And those failures in Amazon are really expensive. We're not talking about tens of millions. Sometimes we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being lost. And the award, it's actually a second-hand shoe, like a trainer, a second-hand trainer. That's the award that you get in Amazon.
So inside the company, who should be who should be the key person who set up the innovation accounting metric?
Very good question. Very good question. It really depends on how your organization is designed. We have seen it work very well if the CEO was the person in charge, but that meant also that the CEO was in charge for all the investments in innovation. So everything that was innovation was under his responsibility. Sometimes it was the Chief Digital Transformation Officer. Sometimes it was the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. So it really depends, but the person that is in charge of the innovation accounting practice should also be the person that's in charge of the innovation strategy. You cannot have innovation strategy sit with Mimi and then innovation accounting sit with me, because there will always be a bit of a conflict between us. She's going to say, no, you're measuring too harsh. And I'm going to say, no, your strategy is bad, right? Like we cannot have that. If the innovation strategy resides with me, I'm going to be the one that's also in charge of the innovation accounting. If it resides with you, you should also be in charge of that. So basically the person in charge of innovation should be the person in charge of setting it up. Involve other people from the board, involve the CFO, involve the CEO, involve other people. But the person in charge of innovation should be the one that's also measuring it.
If you want to adjust some of the key metric inside the innovation accounting, so how often that we should revisit that?
I would visit them probably no more often than once a quarter, but even that is quite often because these things take time. Definitely no later than once a year. So in between a quarter and a year, I think every 6 months would be a very good interval, but don't expect to see, a lot of changes in 6 months. The changes that you're going to see in 6 months are going to be more on the managerial level. How fast are things moving through the portfolio? How are our investments going? Where are most of our investments going towards? But you won't see really big changes. Big changes every year. Every year you'll be able to look at NPVI, for example, and say, look, this year we made X% from products that we didn't have in our portfolio a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago.
I think that there is no. If you have any question, please feel free to scan the QR code if you would like to ask Dan. Okay, for the I think actually like we have already asked all the questions here. The last part I would like to maybe can you share like if you select just only one company in your country that provide like the best innovative solution.
I think that again it depends, right? I'm a big fan of Hermes and Harma and DuPont. We've worked with Harman, but not with DuPont or Hermes. I think other great companies, if you're in the telco space, look at Telefonica. Telefonica is pretty interesting, the way they are approaching and how they are evolving their innovation practice. I think that's probably the most interesting part about Telefonica. If you are in banking, Santander Bank is really good, BBVA, super interesting, ING is a great innovative company. It really depends from industry to industry, but those will be my preferred.
The checklist, better to create a spin-off.
Right. The checklist, you can find it on our blog. I think I wrote an article about it. So if you go to weareoutcome.co, that's our company website. If you go to blog, then there is an article talking about spin-offs, and there's the checklist there. So weareoutcome.co. If not, come see me afterwards, and I'm going to send you a WhatsApp with the article.
Okay, I think this is the last question. And okay, would you please give a key takeaway for all of the board here, especially in Thai market, because I think it's quite different from Europe, but how can we learn from your case study, and at the same time can we be applied to Thai company as well?
Right. So I think the biggest takeaway, or if there's one thing I want to leave you with, is the fact that innovation needs to be connected with your strategic intent as an organization. Innovation should not be viewed as something that we do on the side, and it's just nice to have, once a year, Mimi's organizing an event, let's go there and take some pictures at the Texas event. That's not what innovation is about. Innovation is about creating things that will push your strategic agenda. It's one of the many tools you have in your toolbox as a C-level executive. You have M&A, you have venture capital, you have reorganizations, you can hire and fire people. Innovation is one of the tools there. So use it as a tool for growth, use it as a tool to achieve the strategic agenda of your organization. Obviously, behind that, you have the things that we talked about, metrics and processes and governance. But use it as a growth tool. Don't see it as, oh, that's innovation, that's on the side. No, that's actually very close to what you should be in charge of. Remember at the beginning, the difference in performance between organizations that differentiate and organizations that haven't differentiated? That's basically why we need to innovate and why we need to keep innovation very close to our core. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Obviously, we can talk about metrics and stuff, but more important is to agree on the principle, the fact that innovation is a vehicle for growth and innovation is connected with the strategic agenda.
Actually, there is another question from the audience. Metric usually evolve specific numbers and targets. For innovation, how much do subjective measures play the role?
If you're measuring right, and if you are following the things that we discussed, and if you pick up innovation accounting book by any chance, you're going to see that we would most of the times try to diminish as much as possible the subjective part. The subjective part, it's only when it comes to how confident you are that a certain idea would move forward. But even that confidence should be rooted in the evidence that the team is bringing, evidence from the market that they are heading in the right direction. So again, we are advocating for subjectiveness to not be part of the evaluation. However, we know that at one point, yes, your subjective perspective will influence if you like a team more than you like the others. We are all human, we are prone to biases, we are prone to making mistakes. We cannot remove entirely the subjectiveness, but obviously we try through creating this discipline and through creating this system to remove subjectiveness as much as possible.
You another one. I think the audience would like to ask about 19th century, we're talking about the principle.
Yeah.
20th century, talking about management team. This century, tech. Any suggestion? What's
yes.
next?
So again, your job would be to change the structure and the principles to allow for actually using and usage of the new technologies, right? If what was it like? ChatGPT went to 1 billion users in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, 1 billion users, right? Something like that. It was unbelievable. And after that, Threads was actually 10 days, right? It went to 1 billion users. You have to create and to design an organization that is able to cope with that speed. And that's going to be your number one challenge, regardless if you are a CEO, CFO, chief strategy officer. Your job is to create an organization that can cope with that. That's the reality, and you'll have to find your way.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dan. Actually, I still have the question, but I would like to let the audience to engage with Dan directly about this. So please feel free. I think that Dan still stay with us until this evening. At my office. So in case if you want to connect with Dan directly, Dan still with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your valuable knowledge and insights. And next, we would like to ask your cooperation to evaluate your satisfaction on this event by scanning QR code that show on the screen. Your feedback is very important for us to improve our next activities. Furthermore, on behalf of Thai IOD, we would like to thank all of you for participating in this event. During this time, please allow me to inform you that during this event, we took your photo and we will post on our social media channel. If you are not comfortable to publish your photo, please let us know. In addition, we would like to promote the upcoming event, which are Independent Director Forum under the topic Maximizing Board Effectiveness, the role of lead independent directors in Thai business on 6th of September. And next will be 25th anniversary of Thai IOD on the topic Now and Grow on 10th of September. And the last one will be online director briefing on the topic Leading with Urgency Climate Action for Boards on 24th of September. Thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to see you again in upcoming event. Thank you and สวัสดีค่ะ